The first section on the occult calendar begins with winter solstice. December 21 through 22 is connected with Yule and the winter solstice. Here we see a human sacrifice is required. February 1 and 2 is the occult holiday of Imbolc, also called Imbolc. It is now called Candlemas or Groundhog's Day. This day is in the occult, accompanied by human sacrifice. Notice that from February 1st, the beginning of Imbolc, to February 14, known as St. Valentine's Day, is 13 days, just like there are 13 weeks in a quarter. This is only one of the occult times connected to 13. The spring equinox is around March 21 through 22. It also has a human sacrifice taking place. 13 weeks after New Year's, All Fool's Day takes place. On April 19, a blood sacrifice to the beast takes place. Fire sacrifice is required. It would be interesting to see if some historical, occultic events take place on this day. April 30th through May 1st is Beltane, an occult festival held in honor of Bel. Today, the celebration of May Day takes place on the first day of May. A human sacrifice takes place on Beltane also. Summer solstice takes place on June 21st. A human sacrifice is conducted here too. In the occult, it is called Letha. July 4th is 13 days after Letha. July 19 is 13 days before the occult celebration of Lugnasa, which takes place on the 31st of July through 1st of August. Lugnasa contains a human sacrifice too. The autumnal equinox is celebrated September 21st and is called Mabon. Human sacrifice accompanies this holiday's observance too. However, the highest day of human sacrifice is October 31st, also called Samhain or Halloween. Although not all of the days celebrating the occult, to my knowledge, have so-called Christian counterparts, as you saw, some of these overlap with our holidays of celebration. Now maybe you have seen a little bit of why when former occultists come into the church, they immediately recognize the connections between some of the things we do with some of the same things done in the occult. Have we done the same thing as Nadab and Abihu? Have we taken strange fire and brought it into the temple of God? Or maybe we are like Cain. We want to do our own thing and expect God to bless and accept it. Or perhaps we are related to the Galatians, to whom Paul wrote, "Howbeit then, when ye knew not God, ye did service unto them which by nature are no gods. But now, after that ye have known God, or rather are known of God, how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements, whereunto ye desire again to be in bondage? Ye observe days, and months, and times, and years. I am afraid of you, lest I have bestowed upon you labor in vain." The Galatians had come out of paganism. They had been serving false gods. But then, while still professing Christianity, they had begun to observe the festivities of the pagan gods. Do we do the same? In his book, Lectures on the Book of Revelation, Dr. H.A. Ironside says, "It is a lamentable fact that Babylon's principles and practices are rapidly but surely pervading the churches that escaped from Rome at the time of the Reformation. We may see evidences of it in the wide use of high-sounding ecclesiastical titles once unknown in the Reformed churches, in the revival of holy days and church feasts such as Lent, Good Friday, Easter, and Christ Mass, or as it is generally written, Christmas. Some of these festivals, when they are turned into church festivals, they certainly come under the condemnation of Galatians 4:9 through 11, where the Holy Spirit warns against the observance of days and months and times and seasons. All of them, and many more that might be added, are Babylonish in their origin, and were at one time linked with the Ashtoreth and Tammuz mystery worship. It is through Rome that they have come down to us, and we do well to remember that Babylon is a mother, with daughters who are likely to partake of their mother's characteristics. And in the book The Story of Daniel the Prophet we read, "Nations and peoples today, unconscious of their origin, are perpetuating Babylonian religious customs when they celebrate Christmas with feasting, lighted candles, holly, and mistletoe. It is in commemoration of Babylonian heathen gods that they eat eggs on Easter, and even the wild capers of Halloween, repeat the mysteries of Babylon. The root was not destroyed. Her religious principles have sprung up afresh in every generation and borne fruit in every country. We should watch and guard against the evils which spring from the Babylonian root. So we see that we are knowingly or unknowingly repeating the rituals of ancient Babylon. But now, let us take a deeper look at these pagan rituals and holidays. Halloween is a day of everything unlovely. Also called Samhain, this day is, according to the occult calendar, the highest night of human sacrifice. According to Webster's dictionary, Halloween is short for All Hallows Even. This is one of the most interesting counterfeits of God's true Sabbath. In the fourth commandment we read, "For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and hallowed it." So the seventh day was what was hallowed by God, yet Halloween is the day hallowed by Satan. But there is another interesting connection. In Leviticus we read, "It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest, and ye shall afflict your souls, in the 9th day of the month, at even. From even unto even shall ye celebrate your Sabbath." And, according to former witch Valerie Duffy, the Feast of Samhain is an unholy Sabbath observed by occultists worldwide. Now we know that the devil has no ideas of his own. He only counterfeits what God has. If the devil sees fit to counterfeit something of God's, we should realize that the thing of God's is important, and we should study into what God has given. Most probably know that Halloween is the Day of the Dead, but when God says that the wages of sin is death, should we celebrate a day about the wages of sin? It seems that Halloween and all other days of the dead may be to worship the wicked antediluvians that died in the flood. Although days slightly differ, in most, if not all places, the Festival of the Dead, under any name, typically can be found around October or November. The customs of the Druids, Egyptians, and others who celebrate the Feast of the Dead are highly suggestive of the fact that they are worshiping those who died in the flood. Here is the way the Egyptians celebrated it. In ancient Egypt, the Day of the Dead was observed on the 17th day of Athar, which corresponds to the 17th day of November. On this day, the Egyptian priest would place an image of the god Osiris in a sacred ark and launch it into the sea until it was borne out of sight. But even disregarding the facts that point to the worship of the dead, its satanic connections are undeniable. According to Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan, Satanists consider Halloween the most important day of the year. Satanic, occult, and witchcraft powers are at their highest potency level. Satan and his powers are at their best that night. Even in the modern world, Samhain, or Halloween, is the biggest and the most blatant holiday of the occult. Yet still many Christians partake in its celebration. In the Bible, we are given a warning against the occult and its practices. God says, "There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee." Many practices fall into this text condemnation, such as abortion, card playing, fortune-telling, astrology, magic, and many more. But for the sake of time, we will only cover a few, connected with Halloween in particular. One of the practices forbidden is witchcraft. God feels so strongly about this that he said in Exodus 22:18, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." In Galatians, witchcraft, or pharmakia, is listed as a work of the flesh. But yet, despite the fact that God condemns it and says that a witch should be killed, some professed Christians think it is innocent to have their children dress up as a witch, or they do it themselves. But some may argue, God condemns the practices, but there is nothing wrong with the dress. Is this true? It is clear from the Bible that witches do not serve the true God, but serve a false one. And according to Alexander Hislop, it is a universal principle in all idolatries that the high priest wears the insignia of the god he serves. We also see in the story of Jehu that the priests of Baal were distinguished partly from the worshippers of the true God by their dress. Peter calls us a royal priesthood. Should we be wearing the clothing of those who serve a false god, or should we wear the clothing representative of the true God? Some today may think they are safe meeting with those who they realize are serving the devil and involved in his worship. But in the Bible we are told, "And when they shall say unto you, Seek unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep and that mutter, should not a people seek unto their God, for the living to the dead? To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them." To the law and testimony should be our test, and all the practices which do not fit into the test should be discarded. Now we will move on quickly to another practice mentioned in Deuteronomy, necromancy. Most consider necromancy to be talking to the dead, or demons, but this is not all that necromancy entails. In the book A Trip into the Supernatural, Roger Morneau relates a conversation with the Satanist priest. According to the great master, the spiritualist priest explained, people do not even have to seek help from the supposed spirits of the dead to find themselves enmeshed in necromancy. Belief in life after death itself, he argued, constitutes necromancy. It allows demonic spirits opportunity to impersonate the dead. Also, it amuses and pleases the spirits that they have led people into idolatry. So according to the priest who got his information from the devil, simply believing that after death people still exist alive in some form or another is necromancy. With this concept in mind, we understand that in the story of Saul at the Witch of Endor, Saul was involved in necromancy. In other words, the fact that he actually believed Samuel was still somewhere was the beginning of necromancy. So where did this necromancy or spiritualism originate? Most people trace the modern form of spiritualism to the Fox sisters. One person tells the story. Strange things began to happen on March 31, 1848, in the secluded village of Hydesville, New York, in the humble cottage home of the teenage Fox sisters. These became known as the Raps of Hydesville. They had discovered that the cause of the mysterious rappings was intelligent and would respond with raps as requested. They were sobered. So a code of communication was developed. Such was the beginning of modern spiritualism in America. The stone set outside the cottage has the words, "There is no death, there are no dead." This statement sounds like one of the oldest lies recorded. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. This lie has been proclaimed for ages and is still being promulgated today. It lives on to curse the world, as the devil and his angels deceive men into believing the immortality of the soul. Even Katie Fox, when she was grown, said, "I regard spiritualism as one of the greatest curses that the world has ever known. The belief in life after death has so deceived the people that it will send many to eternal death." We know that the false belief in life after death first came in the Garden of Eden, and that it modernly arose with the Fox sisters. But where did it go between the two? Did it disappear until it reappeared in 1848? Not according to the official spiritualist manual. In the manual it says that people such as Joan of Arc, Emanuel Swedenborg, and the Shakers, etc., are exerted precursors of spiritualism. But the origin of the immortality of the soul goes back even further. Zoroaster was one of its first promulgators, although we can find the teaching in Babylon and ancient Egypt. And according to one source, Chaldean and Indian magi may have been the first who asserted the immortality of the soul. Thus we find that the doctrine of the immortality of the soul originated in pagan religions.